All right, y'all, let's talk about One Piece chapter 1176. Spoiler alert, obviously. Okay, so there were a lot of moments in this chapter that I felt were cool. I like how Frankie got a power up in like the Vega Super Cola. That was cool. I like how Vegapunk was able to actually do something to stop the fires by freezing everything. Very happy to see Lilith and then also Bonnie still here. And one of the Egghead, I think it was actually a great One Piece arc. But one thing I was really missing was stuff for Frankie because it just felt like he should get so much. So to see Frankie and Vegapunk get a little bit of something and Frankie learning something and powering up, because Frankie spent the whole time skip in the Vegapunk lab, was really nice. I wish we got to kind of conceptualize how much more powerful Frankie actually is. He punched that monster really, really hard, but it's kind of hard to really understand how that scales relatively in terms of how much stronger did he really get. But I'm sure we'll learn, like, maybe not pretty soon, but, in the next couple arcs or so. Next, the Dory and Broggy moment where they had that little come to their senses and decided to cut each other's necks off. That was really, really tough. I really enjoyed that moment. I felt nostalgia for their conflict in Little Garden. I feel like more and more time goes by, the more I really appreciate Little Garden. I think for the amount of time spent versus how much that arc really did for the story, it's actually kind of incredible. And it really shows, Little Garden really shows some of the best aspects of One Piece, because that little story arc, which Little Garden was not a bad plot or anything, don't get me twisted, it was just not necessarily the most like hype crazy stuff ever that a lot of modern shonens prefer, especially 100 something chapters in, to have that kind of like epic hype clash. Instead, it was a build-up arc, but it's still paying off 1,000 chapters later with all this great nostalgia, great characters who are still making an impact way, way later in the story. It just feels so good. Now, that ultimately being the solution for Imu's curse, that was interesting. On the one hand, I like how Dory and Brogy's pride and willingness to die actually is what allowed them to live for themselves in the first place. I think it sends a great message for the themes of One Piece, which is all about will, inherited will, standing on your pride and fighting for your dreams and what you believe in, and your friends and their decision to live the way they wanted to and not is actually what opened the door for them, in the same way that Luffy's will to fight no matter what opened doors for him and inspires other people. So I like it thematically. I'm just curious how it's gonna turn out in the future with Imu's ability, because it just felt so crazy hacks, and now it's like, oh, just kill whoever Imu possesses. But I guess it's still hard because Imu's possession does, make them stronger and regenerate. Like, I think you have to one-shot them specifically. So it's interesting.